Dr. Silvia Odorcic, thank you so much for joining us on the Planterners podcast today.
Thank you guys so much. I am beyond excited to be here today.
We're super excited to talk to you. You're a local. We could like throw a stone and it could reach your house if we throw really, really hard. So it's amazing to have a Canadian plant-based doctor on today. And we're going to talk about all things eyes and overall health and wellness. But we wanted to know what your moment of gratitude is before we start.
Oh, I love that. And I love that we're starting with gratitude. That's so beautiful. I think today I was in my car and Bell Let's Talk Day came up. And so the moment of gratitude is for mental health and for all the people out there that are struggling with mental health. There's 1 in 3 Canadians that are affected. So the gratitude is, we can get through this, and let's seek community and connection and be grateful for where we're at in our life right now.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. So we're recording this a little bit early, but we do have the Bell Let's Talk, not a little bit early, but we're recording this, earlier than it's coming out, but January is Bell Let's Talk. You'll see that on our Instagram stories over at Plant Trainers. I mean, well, you would have seen it, I guess is what I'm going to say. And it's something that's near and dear to our heart. I think episode number 6, I talked about for the first time my personal mental health issues and journey. And it wasn't the recording it that was the hard part. It was the knowing it was coming out and everybody's going to listen to it. It was the hard part because I'm a talker.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Couldn't have guessed.
It's amazing that they have this one special day every year to talk about mental health, but we need to remember that it's an ongoing process and thing that we need to get used to talking about all the time. And everybody's going through their own different mental health state at different times of the year. And it's been a struggle for a lot of people over the past couple of years. And if there's anybody out there listening who ever wants to reach out just to talk about whatever they want to talk about, you know where to find us. So I just wanted to put that out there and remind people that they're not alone and there's always people out there to help.
And somebody once said to me, they need to change it from Bell Let's Talk to Bell Let's Listen. And I'm like, well, no, we need to talk about it because we need to hear about it. But the longer I sat with that, the more it resonated with me. And tomorrow should be Bell Let's Listen, because what we should do is open up our ears for the people who need to talk and listen without judgment. So maybe we should all text Bell and tell them that they need to follow up with a Let's Listen day.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think, just normalizing mental health. And, that's a great point. I love the fact that it's something that needs to be talked about year long, even though we focus on it for a month or a day or something, but yeah, it's very important.
So tell us a little bit about how you found the plant-based lifestyle and what changed for you along the way, if anything.
Yeah, honestly, everything changed for me. It was crazy. So I found it about 4.5 years ago, and it was on the tail end of my medical training. And I'd started practicing as an ophthalmologist in Toronto. And I remember just I was cutting off some fat off of a chicken. And I'd always sort of been, into nutrition and eating healthily, but I never really dove into it and understood it, fully or deeply. And so Netflix came on and, the first thing that they were promoting was a movie called What the Health. And I thought, health, I'm just finished my medical training, like perfect, let's dive in. And there I am, I'm cutting the chicken. I'm like trying to remove the fat portion off of it. And it starts playing. And I remember thinking like, am I in a punked, like, is Ashton Kutcher going to just like jump out and be like, just joking, like this, what we taught you in medical school, it's not really fully complete. Like we missed this whole entire portion. And by the end of the movie, I was so convinced that there was ample evidence there. I mean, it was an evidence-based nutrition movie that had doctors, PhDs, nutritionists, dietitians talking about the power of plants and how it treats and reverses chronic disease. And I hadn't heard of it in medical school at all. So overnight, I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm going plant-based. And it was such a strong decision. Like I remember waking up the next day and being, this is going to sound awful, but just being repulsed by milk, just thinking like, why had I never thought, where does milk come from? Okay. How is it made? What am I actually drinking there? And I quickly switched to soy. And so the transition was quick, but I kept fish on for an extra month. And that's because my family doctor actually told me that I couldn't get omega-3s from any other source. So there was a bit of confusion at the beginning, but again, that's because I had to piece together the pieces of information out there.
And I think that's interesting. How much in ophthalmology, how much nutrition education did you get?
None.
Did you get your hour like some of the other doctors?
Let me tell you, I don't even know that there is an hour. There is a study called ARIDS, which is a large study that looks at dry and wet macular disease. And that study looked at nutritional supplementation in the form of a pill, which now we give to patients that fit certain type criteria. But aside from that, like I'm thinking back, and I just remember thinking, like, even to pass the exam, we're supposed to, counsel diabetic patients on nutrition. And most of it would just be like, after we finished the ophthalmology part, would be like, and eat healthy, exercise, and don't stress. And that was like the end of it. So it was very minimal, you guys. I mean, it was kind of laughable, to be honest.
So did you do more research, or were you convinced and you were like, you're a science mind and that was enough, or did you need to do more?
Actually, strangely enough, the science mind helped because I knew how to read studies. But at the same time, I was bombarded with all of this information when I started Googling. And, I went into PubMed, I tried looking at some studies myself, but I thought I need an organized source of trusted information. So I actually eventually found Lifestyle Medicine pretty quickly within a couple months. And I was like, what is this? I'd never heard of this subspecialty. I didn't even know that it existed. So I was like, wow, this is incredible. They use whole food, plant-based nutrition to treat, prevent, and reverse chronic disease. So I was like, this is my jam. Like, I've got to figure out, how do I become a lifestyle medicine physician, and what do these people even do? So that was sort of my next step, because I thought, if I'm really going to counsel patients properly, I needed to be 1,000% confident that what I was saying was true and that it was backed by evidence.
And thank you for doing that. And thank you for doing that, because there's a lot of doctors who do their research on the replays of Dr. Oz and all of that, right? And and I at least give those doctors credit for making some kind of effort to learn, right? Because you guys aren't taught, and so it's not everybody's fault per se. But so let me just ask a question about lifestyle medicine. If somebody sees lifestyle medicine on a website or on a doctor's credentials, does that 100% mean plant-based, or is there lifestyle medicine out there that isn't plant-based as well?
So, so there's so many specialties or allied health professionals that use plant-based medicine, or that could potentially use it. So there are, of course, dietitians that are plant-based, registered dietitians. There are functional medicine doctors, integrative medicine doctors. But if it says lifestyle medicine physician and it's board certified under the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, that is 100% whole food plant-based nutrition. That is the crux of the program, in addition to exercise, chronic stress reduction, and reduction in substance abuse, mostly tobacco and alcohol.
And it's amazing how 10 years ago, when I started this lifestyle, more than 10 years now, but there was no doctors were talking, like very few were talking about it in the public. And you went through med school, you said 4.5 years ago or something like that, you finished, and that still hasn't changed that much. But in the last 4 years, I would say that it's definitely changed quite a bit. I don't know how much is being taught in schools, but I think that in the US, I know Dr. Neil Barnard has been working with his physicians committee on getting it in universities. And I know there's been a lot of steps forward in the education process. And I know there are people like me that are teachers in high schools that have this background or have learned about it and are sharing it. So things have changed, and you could see it in the market as well. In the supermarket, you could see more foods available than there ever were before. There's a lot of options available. While many of them are processed and not healthy foods, but there's still the movement of going more towards plants. So things have definitely changed in a big way in the last few years.
I agree. I'm going to echo that. And there's definitely a wave, and the momentum is building. So even at University of Toronto, I think about two or so years ago, they started a cooking sort of portion that was part of the medical training. Now, I don't think it's exclusively focused on plants, but they do talk a little bit about plant-based nutrition. So just the fact that they're teaching doctors about the importance of meal prep, cooking, and going over some of that stuff, I think that's incredible. But again, I wish there was more, and we're heading in the right direction, though. I agree.
For sure.
So talk about what things are changing. What changed for you when you started to implement the whole food plant-based diet?
Oh yeah, we didn't even get to that. We didn't even get to that part. So what changed for me was like, honestly, you guys, like I felt more energized than I've ever felt in my life. Like I felt like I was 10 years younger. And I think that was a combination of starting to really nourish my body. And when I did that, that extra energy, I was able to start working out regularly, which again, I hadn't been doing in medical school. And all these things seem to feed into each other, right? Like when you work out more, you tend to sleep better. If you're eating healthier, you'll also sleep better. You'll have less inflammation in your body. And so all the pieces of sort of the lifestyle puzzle started to come into place, but it started with the plant-based nutrition. Like that sort of was the spark that ignited it. And then the other pieces came into play. And I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to keep going as long as I can with this thing. And then I started looking online and I was like, Rich Roll, I love this man. Like, who is this guy? I found his podcast. I started listening. I got his book. I'm like, wait a second. Can I do endurance events? Like, should I try for a marathon? So all these things, but they all started just from making some fundamental changes to my nutrition. It's incredible where it can take you. It's just like a door flings open.
So it could fling open for so many people and for so many of your patients as well. So what I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about ophthalmology, a little bit about the eye, and let's talk about how lifestyle can affect eye health, not just vision, but eye health in general. So what parts of the eye can be affected by lifestyle and aren't only genetic, and that will happen regardless of lifestyle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I could probably anatomically go from front to the front of the eye to the back and give you examples at each level. So let's just start with some basic ones. So we all have probably heard about cataracts. If we live long enough, we'll probably get our cataract taken out. So the cataract starts in your lens. So your lens is a clear focusing area at the front of your eye. So it focuses a lot of the light. And as we age, that clear lens through oxidative stress becomes yellow. Okay. And it's a normal aging change, because with UV light and all these things, eventually you will get a cataract. But the incredible part is that the rate at which you get it is highly affected by lifestyle. And there are some smaller studies that point to this, but I anecdotally can tell you from the patients that I've seen with the varying age ranges, that the ones that have chronic diseases like diabetes, et cetera, related to lifestyle, type 2 diabetes, oh my gosh, like we have to screen them earlier. Of course, they have more oxidative stress in their body. They get cataracts earlier. Whereas I remember, I'll never forget, there was a man, he must have been like in his 90s, 92, 93. And he had just a tinge of yellow in his lens. And I asked the guy, I said, what are you doing? Because you have the lens of like a 30-year-old. Like, what are you doing? And he basically said, I eat tons of veggies, I walk every day, and I meditate. And I was like, let me get that gold nugget that you've just plopped there, right? And let me, apply it to my life and all my patients' lives, because it was incredible to see that preservation of the natural state of the eye when it's not under duress, right?
Sounds
So
too
cataracts
simple.
is one. Yeah.
It sounds too, I think that's why people don't believe it. Like they don't trust
Yeah.
it because it's too easy. There
Yeah.
must be something not to it. Like that's always been the biggest issue with eating plants. Like it can't be that easy that it's curing all these diseases or reversing heart disease or changing lives and lasting long. Like it's too simple.
With so many tools that I use in my coaching, I hear that all the time. And if I had $1 for that, for everybody who said that, I wouldn't have to charge for coaching. But at the end of the day, some of these things are so simple and so fundamental. But the hard part is making the change. And the hard part is
Making it last.
making it last and being able to give up one thing to be able to have another thing. So it's the behavior that's the hardest part. But yeah, it seems too good to be too good to be true. Okay, what's next?
So in terms of other diseases, so we also know that macular degeneration, which is one of the most common diseases that we see at the back of the eye, and that's where you get these sort of deposits in your retina. And sometimes what happens is that you can also get leakage. So the dry macular degeneration can turn into the wet form, and that can result in devastating visual loss. And oftentimes those patients will have to come in for monthly injections in the eye. So can you imagine, I mean, every 4 weeks having to get a medication directly injected into your eyeball? I mean, that does not sound like fun to me. And I can tell you, in giving those injections, it wasn't fun. I had a firefighter faint on me, full out vasovagal. Like, I was like, okay, just get up. We're going to have to do this again. Okay. But yeah, so macular degeneration is another one. And as I mentioned earlier, that ARID study. So what they found was that there was a certain mix of vitamins like zinc, lutein, zeaxanthin, these types of things, where when it was put in a formulation and it was taken as a supplement, it helped a certain subset of people. But I think that's only because the people did not have a beautiful, varied, abundant diet that was high in plants, where we would get that naturally. I mean, if you have a well-planned, balanced diet, you'd be getting those nutrients and you wouldn't need supplementation, right?
So even if you're eating extremely plant heavy and your animal products are more like your condiments or your side dish, you'd probably still be like, you'd be in a much better situation than
I
most
think
of
so.
North America.
I mean, again, there's been no studies on that because,
right.
I mean, I don't know who would even fund those studies. You know, like those studies wouldn't get funded, right? Like there's no funding for checking out if kale's good for us, for our heart, right?
Well, nutritionfacts.org seems to find a lot of studies. And when they break down how the study was done, it gives a lot of information there too. What's glaucoma?
Oh yeah. So glaucoma is not as common as, let's say, macular degeneration or cataracts, but it is something that we would see on a daily basis. So glaucoma is literally when your eye has a certain pressure, right? Otherwise it would be like a ping pong ball with, you know, once you press it in, it would be all shriveled up, right? Like it needs a certain pressure to remain inflated. And that pressure is produced by your own eye. It's aqueous that's produced and that's pumped into the eye. But what happens is that there is a change whereby the pressure starts to build up in the eye. And there's many, many types of glaucoma. But the regular sort of age-related glaucoma, it happens, the pressure gets too high and it starts to press on the optic nerve. And basically over time starts to slowly degrade your vision. So people don't notice it because the earliest symptom is tunnel vision, right? Like some of the earlier symptoms, maybe just that your peripheral field is constricting, but unless you're testing it out, that's not something that you may pick up. So oftentimes people will come in, we'll check their intraocular pressure and be like, whoa, like your pressure is way too high. And we do additional tests to confirm the diagnosis. And then we often start the people on drops literally the day of to start lowering that pressure. So it's a chronic, very insidious, it's an insidious disease and there's no cure for it. That's the sad part. It's kind of just, let's try to manage the pressure so that no further damage is done.
So if you're eating a diet that's high in plants and you have better eye circulation, you don't have as much, plaque building up inside your body, and the blood circulation is good and all of those things, and there's not as much oxidative stress happening in the eye and throughout the body, then your chances, I mean, I guess you're going to say there's been no study, but in theory, yes, but then your chances of just not developing that in the first place should technically be lower.
It should, but glaucoma is one of those weird ones where there is a higher genetic predisposition. And again, it depends on the type of glaucoma. Some are very highly genetically predisposed. So glaucoma is really not one of those, I think, that intersects with lifestyle as much, but the others really do. And when you think about the back of the eye, I mean, that's the only place in the human body where we can have a look at the status of our body without cutting it open, right? I mean, we don't need any fancy equipment. We just literally use a lens, direct light into the back of the eye. We can look at the blood vessels right there in all their glory, pumping the blood, doing the thing. Or conversely, if someone has, let's say, hypertension, we'd be able to see that the blood vessel is involved. Or let's say their cholesterol is really high. Well, you get something that's called a cholesterol emboli. So it's a stroke to the eye. So you'll literally look in, you'll see this vessel, it's occluded, and you'll see this shiny, sparkly cholesterol embolus. And past that embolus, the retina starts to die off. And so again, you can see it happening right there.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this all started with the tumor that I was told I had, and I did, and then it led to the retinal exam that I went through. And you've seen my eye, right? The picture?
Yeah, I've seen the picture of the back of your eye. Yes.
Like I'll share it now so you could take a look at it. And those people that are listening or watching on YouTube, you could take a look at it, and maybe I'll put it in the show notes too. But one of these was the first one, and one of them was a year after I transitioned to a plant-based lifestyle. I mean, maybe you could tell us what you're seeing on these images, if anything.
Yeah. So the images, of course, it would be much different than when I would look into the eye. These are 2D images. So just bearing that in mind, we get a lot of information from 3D, the 3D, and also the dynamic movement. So, but just based on these, like if you just showed me these and gave me nothing else. So the picture here on my left, I just have a look at the optic nerve, and immediately I notice that it is very full. There's fullness in the nerve. So for some reason, either the nerve is inflamed, it can be something like an optic neuritis or an optic neuropathy, or there's pressure building up behind the eye, either at the optic nerve or somewhere downstream, like in the head. So when people have something called hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of pressure in their head, it will basically come all the way down to the optic nerve, and the poor optic nerve starts bulging with this pressure. So that's one thing that I notice. And then when I look at the vessels, you can see the arteries and the veins there, and they look like, how do I describe this? Almost, we call it like a box carring. Like there's little constrictions. It's not a smooth tube all along. There's little constrictions at various sites, and some badly constricted areas there as well. And so again, that begs the question, is there hypertension going on in the body, or is the vessel constricting because the optic nerve is constricted, or there's something going on in the brain? So if I saw this picture, I would take a very in-depth history. We would do a bunch of blood work, get a scan of your brain, and figure out what was going on. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
The whole thing's wild.
Yeah.
When I first showed it to her, she was like, wow,
it's a
like
big difference.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge difference. And so here's the cool thing, right? He didn't get tested again for another year, right? Like he went back for that scan a year later, but he had just gotten recently, in a past year or 2 years, glasses that he needed for, he was nearsighted. So he needed them. He needed the ones that, so that he could see far for distance, right?
Yeah, that's the most common thing. Yeah.
Okay. So what do we call those?
Myopia.
Okay. So that's what he had. And so he's wearing his glasses. Sometimes the TV's pretty far away from our bed. So sometimes, for a TV, but he kept them in the car because he really did need them at night for driving, not so much during the day. So we'd get in the car and he'd forget because he never wore them during the day. And he'd be like, Shush, can you hand me my glasses? So I'd hand him his glasses, hand him his glasses, and then all of a sudden it's no glasses, and I realized months later that he hadn't asked, and it wasn't COVID, so it's not like we weren't driving anymore. He hadn't been asking for his glasses anymore, and his eye health clearly from the picture, his eye health improved, but just from a day-to-day lifestyle,
Yeah.
his eye health improved, and he didn't like, there was no trigger in his body to say, give me my glasses now, because he could see so much better.
Right. Yes. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? I mean, as the length of the eye changes too, that'll change your what we call refraction. So, how strong of a lens you need in your eye. And with the bulging of the optic nerve, I mean, the length of the eye completely changes, right? So, I mean, that could have been a huge issue. And of course, with swelling at the back, that'll impede certain areas, and people can even get something called scotomas, so areas in their vision that almost are kind of like a black spot or a smudge spot where they're like, I can see around this area, but when I'm reading, like this word disappears on my page or something. And those are called scotoma type visual defects. So I don't know what full workup you got, but hopefully they got like a visual fields test on you, a scan, and started doing the whole,
Yeah.
the whole
It was
thing, right?
it was a long process, but
Yeah.
all good now. And
Yes.
so, I mean, that's me. That's my eye. That's my personal story, I guess. But with your patients, do you implement any lifestyle or health or nutrition changes for them? And have you seen any other people go through any changes with their sight or eye health?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I actually was asked this yesterday too, and I gave a completely honest and transparent answer. And that is, in ophthalmology, we're a very high volume based specialty. So unlike a neurologist where sometimes they'll go over a history for half an hour, 45 minutes, we see upwards of 50, 80, even I've been in clinics where they've seen 100 patients a day. I mean, it
Wow.
sounds crazy, but that's like 5 to 10 minutes per patient, right? And that's just because there's a lot of patients that need to be seen. And so there isn't much time to do nutritional counseling. It's just not part of our repertoire. And for certain patients where I thought, they really needed it, I would spend a few minutes and just hand them like an RX and be like, go look at forks over knives, or, go for the China study, check out the game changers, whatever I thought might motivate them, and then check back. And there were a few that actually got on the plant-based, route and came back and lost. I had one guy lose like 50 pounds. And I was like, what have you been doing in the last 6 months? And he's like, I just started going plant-based, me and my wife. And like, she lost a bunch too. So there are these sort of star stories, but overall, I really think that at least in the Canadian system, we need to have a separate container for lifestyle, lifestyle medicine, basically. And it is a recognized subspecialty. So there are family doctors, internal medicine, cardiologists that have that as a secondary subspecialty. So one thing that somebody could do is just Google online to see if there are any lifestyle medicine doctors in the area. And I know that the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, or ABLM, they have their own website. And so all lifestyle medicine doctors have the opportunity of being registered there. So if you can find one in your area that's happy to see you, I mean, that's probably the greatest source of empowerment for someone wanting to look into lifestyle.
So thank you for being so honest and transparent about that. And it's true. And it is a really big problem. It's almost like you need to say, here's my YouTube, and just watch all the videos, kind of thing. So what message do you have for people now in terms of how they should be eating to help support their eyes? Is it different than what all the other doctors have said for all the other body parts, or is it the same? Like, yeah.
It's the same. I mean, we live in a reductionist, at least in the traditional medical system, it's a very reductionist paradigm where each organ is treated by a subspecialist. But it's like, come on, guys, these are all related. It's if you've got, type 2 diabetes, the vessels that are causing erectile dysfunction, the same vessels are having problems in your eye. The same vessels are having problems in your brain, right? You're at high risk of stroke. So we can't just separate the organs and say, okay, this is specifically great for the eye. And of course, you hear lutein, zeaxanthin. These are sort of nutrients that promote eye health, and that's all fine and dandy. But I think if you just eat a well-planned, well-balanced plant-based or predominantly plant-based diet that's low in processed foods. I mean, if you could do that one thing and nothing else, that could probably give you like 5 to 8 years on your life just there.
That's crazy.
It's amazing. And I love how, it doesn't, the nephrologist, it doesn't matter which doctor we're talking to, it's the same, but we teach our kids, eat your carrots, they're good for your eyes, right?
Yes,
Are
yes,
they really good are they that much better for our eyes than a piece of broccoli or,
Because they got the vitamin A,
And yes, but vitamin A is crucial to the functioning of the retinal cells, but the only time that is ever really a problem, and I've seen it in clinic, is when someone comes malnourished from another country where they're malnourished across the board. So it's not just the eye that's having problems. They've got massive malnourishment across the board because they're just not getting enough calories.
Yeah. So is there a specific food that's better for the eye?
No.
Just general
I wouldn't.
plants?
Honestly, I would say, like, I know people talk about nutrients of focus, especially for vegans, right? We talk about, you've got to get your B12 in. There's talk about iodine, like all these things. But really, I would focus on just a well-balanced diet and then address the, for example, vitamin D and B12. It's almost like across the board recommendation for anyone that's plant-based, right? Like we know that's foundational. The others like omega-3 are questionable, but those two are foundational. So that's kind of like what you need to take care of all year long,
It's actually a recommendation for most people, not just people that are plant-based now. Most people are falling short on their B12. And if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, they're falling short on their D as well.
Oh, yes. I'm sure the vitamin D companies are not crying right now. They have had such a spike and everybody's starting to take 18,000.
They should put it in the water. Honestly, I don't know how much you guys take, but when I had my vitamin D tested, I was just literally at the lowest part of the okay range, and I was taking 1,000 IUs. So in the winter, I know I need 2,000. Again, everyone's different. I would recommend going and getting your blood work done and just check and do it in the winter, because that'll give you the most, I don't want to say shocking, but like the most honest level of vitamin D. Do it in the dead of winter. Like right now is perfect. It's -20 here. Get your vitamin D and check it out.
You used up a bit of your stores and
exactly. Yes.
That's a good tip. Yep.
Well, this has been amazing. And I love the message of overall wellness and then, overall eye health. And our eyes are so important. People absolutely learn to maneuver through life and be successful through life without their eyesight. But if you have, if you can put in this insurance policy to decrease the chances of losing your eyesight at a later age and being able to see your grandchildren, great grandchildren, what have you, still take part in a lot of the activities that you have and hobbies that you've had without having to adjust later on in life. That's huge. And it's not just an implication, of course, for your eyes, it's for your whole entire body. And like you said, put another 5 to 7 years on your life. And we want those 5 to 7 years to be healthy years. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And I just want to maybe echo one thing you said, which is so beautifully put, is like, you want to see your grandchildren's faces. Make it more than a number on a scale or whether you're going to fit into that dress. Make it about what really matters in your life. And usually that's our loved ones. So what would you be missing out on, at 80, maybe you still want to do Machu Picchu. You don't want to have an oxygen tank tethering you down, right? So think of like the things that you really want to accomplish in your life and sustainably commit to making yourself as strong as possible so that happens.
And I think you're a strong role model for that. I love what you're doing over on Instagram. I love how you're empowering people. So what's your final message, and tell us a little bit also about your Instagram so that people know what to expect when they go there.
Yeah, thank you. That's so kind. And I know, first of all, before I answer that, let me say thank you to both of you, because you have been in this game for a while and putting out incredible podcasts. recorded 5 episodes of my podcast. I've taken a break. I know that it is a tremendous amount of dedication and work. So what you guys are putting out there, it's huge. And it's a reservoir, right? Like it builds so that the people can watch all the back episodes and like really get informed and empowered. So thank you for that. In terms of my Instagram, it's just a place for me to be creative as heck. It's a place for me to empower people with health and lifestyle foundational things that I think everyone needs to know. And this year, it's taken a bit of a turn. My mission has been ignited. And for me, I'm really focusing on women and women's empowerment and women's legacies. So I noticed working with some women at the tail end of last year was that despite going through several, consultations, and there's women, they lost weight and they cut out the processed foods, they came off of the vegan junk foods, or they transitioned. There was still a lack of like, why am I really doing this? And how can I make it sustainable? And I saw that like little habit building, but the slip back, or something happened, like there was a stress moment and there was a crack and they slip back, 5 steps up, 3 steps back. And I thought there's got to be more to this. And when I started looking at it, I thought, if we can make it matter, we can make it happen. So how can I empower these women with like, let's make this health change sustainable for the long term? And that really involves pulling out their legacy. Like, what is it that you were put on this planet to do in this one lap? And if we can figure out what that is, then you'll be friggin' sure that you're going to want to be healthy to do that. Because once your mission comes alive, it's like there's nothing that can stop you. You guys know, like, if you decide like you're going to run that triathlon and you're empowered and energized and you're vibing with that, you are unstoppable. Like, put a wall in front of you, you're going to bust right through it. So that's the kind of power and energy that I'm bringing to my Instagram this year and the women that I'm working with this year.
I love that, Dr. Silvia. If we could make it matter, we could make it happen. That's such a strong statement, and one that everybody listening needs to really think about and take action on. Dr. Silvia, if people want to reach out to you, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, I'd love you guys to just connect on Instagram. I love meeting you guys. You can find me at drsilvia.md, and just send me a DM. Honestly, sometimes I'll have people there in the community sitting, and after many months or a year, they're like, they say, hi, don't wait that long. Just say, we found the podcast, we listened, come and say hello and we'll connect. And I'm here to support you guys, because it's all about connection and community, and how can we lift each other up. So one of my favorite quotes that I read recently is, a rising tide lifts all ships. So how can we be a rising tide for those around us? And let's just all lift each other up. Beautiful.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us on the Plant Trainers podcast. Thank you so much for everything you said before. We really do appreciate it.
No, I loved it. Thank you both so much for all the work you do.